Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Warwick F1 show. It's race week, finally. We've made it. We've actually made it through the winter months. The sun is shining into the evening and F1 is back. And we had testing over the weekend, typically with testing. Over the weekend? Over the early stages. It was over the weekend. When was it?
It's at the end of last week.
Yeah, end of last week. But typically told us, I think, a bit, but not much. Like, Red Bull seemed good, ominously. They seem to have been able to make Mercedes' zero-pod strategy work, which is depressing. And, everyone else kind of shuffling about the order. I'm, as ever, joined by Will and Chinmay, and we're going to discuss, for now, just some of the takeaways from testing as well, and also talk about the new season of Drive to Survive that came out. Obviously, sparked interest in F1 and back for a sixth season now, without perhaps the involvement of the world champion, but a number of interesting kind of storylines that it showed with Alpine, Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton, and probably maybe explaining a bit more why Hamilton opted to join Ferrari for 2025. But yeah, testing. So in Bahrain for 3 days we were there. I think it was fairly standard. Nothing probably the most eventful testing I can think of was back in 2014 when all the cars were just breaking down every 5 minutes.
What's wrong with that? That was the best testing.
It was quite good, to be fair. But this one, it is exceptionally hard to tell who is good because all the teams are running different tyre compounds, are running different engine settings, aero packages. We don't really know exactly what the order is, but you can kind of shake it out a little, and at least at the front it is looking like another year of potential Red Bull dominance, which is a bit scary.
Yeah, it was like Adrian Newey was playing it down, saying, we don't quite think it's the second that everyone thinks it is, but it's at least 0.3. I'm like, great.
The fact is they're still ahead is the main thing.
Yeah, and when you add Max to that 0.3,
it
kind of becomes 0.6.
Yeah, which isn't ideal.
Yeah, they appear to have made it or their new strategy or new design philosophy work. Adrian Newey once again proving himself as the GOAT of F1 designers. I personally think there is a little bit of hope. We all saw kind of day one when Red Bull were a second quicker than everyone else, but then on day 2 and 3 they kind of dropped back into the pack a bit more. Yeah. I know Verstappen wasn't running on day 2, but even on day 3 he wasn't quite as far ahead as he was on day 1. So I think there's hope, personally.
I personally don't think there's hope. Especially with all the reports saying that Red Bull ran a very conservative engine mode throughout the entirety of testing, and the fact that most of the time they were doing long, high fuel runs as well. And just reading all the sort of technicalities behind it, it seems that Red Bull do have the upper hand in pretty much every department heading into the Bahrain Grand Prix. But especially in the midfield, they're looking at a very, very close battle. Could Ferrari catch up to Red Bull? Is Mercedes going to start making up ground? Can McLaren keep up their late season momentum? Aston Martin, can they sort of hopefully redo what they did in last year, beginning of the year, but just avoid the drop off? And then obviously we look at other teams no teams look entirely adrift from the rest of the field. So it looks like there might be some competition after all, at least. But yeah.
It's giving me 2022 vibes. Everyone kind of knew Red Bull and Ferrari to an extent were the better teams, but there was kind of that. We don't really know for sure. There could be a surprise package. We don't, as you said, we don't know what everyone was running, how everyone was running. I think from second place to about 10th place could be anyone. In terms of drivers, not necessarily cars. You've got kind of that second. Well, Perez is Red Bull. both Ferraris, both Mercs, both Astons, both McLarens could fit in
think
any of those positions.
Even RB were looking all right as
relatively
well.
racy.
I completely agree. I think after if we do maybe make the assumption that Red Bull are going to be the number one team, which as much as I want to cope about it, probably it's looking like down to fifth place down to fifth place in the constructors. It's really looking up in the air at the moment. Mercedes, good words coming from Lewis Hamilton saying the W15 is better than its predecessors.
Drivable.
Which is always a good start. But Ferrari, I think, have been fairly quiet about their success.
Confident.
Yeah, quietly
I think
confident.
they topped the second 2 days, the second and third days, and then they kind of seem to have better race pace than what they've shown previously. And Bahrain's a track they've kind of always done well at. Not necessarily in terms of race pace, but especially in qualifying. So.
Yeah. Aston Martin then you've got kind of Aston Martin and McLaren. McLaren, again, I think we'll do Aston Martin first because I think they're also kind of quietly, I don't know if they're as quietly confident as Ferrari, but they seem satisfied and happy with how their car is performing and the work they've done on it over the winter break. McLaren didn't have maybe the best testing in terms of results, but again, it's difficult to tell what they were doing.
Issues, but nothing major. The car was better than it was this time last year by far.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's just not a track.
They've always struggled in Bahrain. We obviously saw it last year. They were, I think, they both cars retired, I think, in the end, and they were running at the back of the grid. But I mean, they aimed to kick on from last season when they ended up, or Norris scored the most points outside of Verstappen from Austria onwards. So at least I think for those 4 teams, it's very up in the air at the moment about that order. I've seen predictions of pace that put Mercedes 5th, and I've seen some that put Mercedes 2nd. Like that, those 4, I think, maybe for me, a bit more Ferrari v Mercedes and McLaren v Aston at the moment look like, if you were going to split the 4 down into 2 twos, would be the ones I would go for. But I think, again, perhaps too early to say in terms of where they're all going to shuffle out in a few days' time.
Yeah, no, just looking as well, it's like, so obviously McLaren had an issue with what was the fuel system issue and a clutch issue. They left them out of, especially in the beginning of testing. But yeah, and also they're lucky at Piastri was 0.129 seconds faster than Alonso on the same compound on the final day. But they seemed having issues with tyre degradation compared to Aston Martin. So it will be, but then again, just look at everything as well. We're looking at a good fight between those 4.
Yeah. And then I guess behind them, it seems like RB are a solid 6th at the moment.
Like last year's Alpine.
Yeah.
Like they kind of had maybe not necessarily bigger hopes like Alpine did last year, but they're kind of on their own a little bit.
Yeah. But a weird one for me, Sauber, they seem quietly confident as well.
They have been at this track, especially the last few years as well. We've seen that in 2022 and 2023 that they kind of come up. Well, even when Kimi was there in previous years, they come out the blocks really well, like are challenging for the points, and then they don't really develop the car.
Yeah, well, I mean, Zhou got his first points
in his first race.
In his first race at the opening race last season, but I don't know. They've seemed confident. There's not been like rumblings of discontent. Like Bottas seems quite confident. I don't know if maybe that is a sign of kind of retirement, but
well, to be honest, I just don't think Bottas cares anymore.
Yeah,
he's just loving life right now.
Yeah.
But I think Sauber could. If I was going to say there'd be not a dark horse in terms of maybe like an Aston Martin last year, because I think that's quite rare in terms of jumping that high. But I think Sauber could, at least for me, be a team that maybe is a bit better than I think most people were expecting it to be.
I wouldn't be shocked if we see them fighting the Astons and McLarens. But I also wouldn't be shocked if we see them at the back of the grid.
Yeah, I think they're kind of the team. Actually, well, they're the team at the moment. There maybe is that the most uncertainty about, kind of because in every year they kind of get left out from the discussion. Everyone's got things that they kind of want to discuss a little bit more, and Sauber get lost, and that could be to their positive if no one's focusing on them and they rock up and they've got a good car. Yeah. And then we've got the final three teams.
Can we start with Alpine?
No, we'll finish.
Okay.
I think
We'll finish.
Williams had a difficult, I'd say, testing.
Logan Sargent had a difficult testing.
Yeah, spun
Many times.
Yeah, it was a couple times.
It was a few times. But not feeling anyone with confidence. Albon looked okay, kind of his steady self.
But it was just kind of, they were a bit like Sauber. I think Sauber had more confidence, but Williams were just a bit more there. I mean, James Vowles was saying that they are looking towards next year as well, 2025 already. Always isn't a good sign in terms of how you think your car's going to do. So, I mean, Williams probably similar to last year in terms of results, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I just look at Albon was 0.2 off Sonoda's same time off the same tire.
I think they'll be a team. They'll be like they always are. They'll be good at certain tracks.
I think they'll do okay at Bahrain. It's long straights. They tend to do quite well.
Yeah. So when they get to Monza, they really shine.
Yeah.
But yeah, the final two teams, weird ones. I think we'll save Alpine for last. I think that's almost the biggest story out of testing. Haas do look slow, but do look reliably
They look
slow.
better.
Yeah, they do look.
You can see there's been an emphasis put on that, like the performance and reliability, and okay, we need to be there to sweep up the points when teams have issues or are out of position.
Nothing went wrong for them,
but
that doesn't necessarily mean it's going right.
No, but they look. I think the biggest storyline from my point of view is that the Ferrari engine looks relatively reliable.
Yeah, just tapping the table there. I mean, no one really has hopes for them, so I think anything they do well will exceed expectations.
Yeah, I mean, as well, they do tend to go well around Bahrain. We've seen in recent years. Maybe not so last year, but like 2022.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
they start the season well. They're a bit like Sauber in that sense.
Yeah. And at the moment, obviously, it's very difficult to say. And
especially from where they were last year as well.
Yeah. But it's this final team that really, I would say almost this is the biggest story out of testing. And that is that Alpine look on the ropes.
They look dreadful.
Their car, apparently, there's no kind of good news coming out of the team.
It doesn't look slimline. It looks, everything's like, if you look at all the noses, I think F1's Instagram put one out. It's just so wide and so like unaerodynamic. Like we were talking about liveries last week, and they even got bullied to putting more paint on their car that's already way too heavy and sluggish. And it's like they just can't do anything right.
Apparently, or I read somewhere that engineers might have been liking tweets about how their car isn't particularly good. Reports that some engineers kind of want out of the team because they just don't feel it's a serious kind of outfit. It doesn't look... Nothing looks good coming out of that team. And like, you think of Haas and maybe Williams and maybe Sauber. There's not... Nothing is coming out of those teams. And that is almost a good sign. But bad things are coming out of Alpine, which obviously is a bad sign. I mean, what were the kind of results for Alpine?
So they were the slowest in pure pace of all the teams, and even when you factor in like the tyre compound, the time of day the laps were set, it's not looking good for them. Obviously, they did have I think they had the slowest fastest lap as well of the 10 teams, which Gasly on the C3 tyres was just over 1:32. Just put in perspective, Haas were about 0.4 quicker on the same tyre compound with Nico Hülkenberg at the helm.
Oh, no.
I'm just looking at others. So Yuki Tsunoda on the C3's one... No, is it C... Well, okay.
Yeah, C3.
No. Yeah.
Yeah, C3.
Yep. Oscar Piastri 1:31 dead pretty much on a C3s as well. Fernando Alonso 1 minute 31.1. So, especially with the sort of teams they want to be scrapping with, they're looking to be a second behind on what is literally the medium tyre.
That's the fastest tyre they're taking to Bahrain, I think. They're C1, C2, C3, I believe.
It's a C5. Yeah, C5 is the quickest.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they've got C0 as well now.
Yeah, the C0. Do you remember the super hard?
I bring back the
rainbow.
Yeah, bring back the rainbow of tyres. I just love seeing it every so often. You'll see the tweet pop up. It's just confused modern F1 fans, just at all the different tyres.
The ultra soft.
Hyper soft.
The light pastel pink tyres.
Oh, but they look so good. Those pinks on the Racing Points were
the best one was the purple ones around Monaco.
Yeah.
Like
F1, listen to bring back the. I know it's for
they
simplicity, but the C1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's far more complicated.
It's so much easier to say, oh, we've got these tyres this week, and it's so easy to compare them. Like, okay.
Also, like yellow, red, and white. They're getting old. Let's bring in pink.
Boring.
I want a blue.
Tyre we actually
slick
use.
tyre. To be fair, I think like the ultra hard only got used for one race
in Silverstone.
By like Hulkenberg, just for
was
20
like
laps.
the light blue, wasn't it?
It was like the slowest tyre on planet
They always
Earth.
had it was like the orange, the white, and the yellow at Silverstone every year. So
Yeah, because tyres kept exploding there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So I mean, we've all kind of set a top 10 or 10 kind of
pecking order.
Exactly. We'll come back to this next week and realise it was completely wrong. But I've gone for Red Bull. I perhaps am coping a little, but I put Mercedes second, Ferrari, then McLaren, Aston, then RB, Sauber, and then I put Alpine 8th, Williams, and Haas. 'Cause as much as the bad news is coming out of Alpine, they were all right last season. I just don't think you can regress that quickly.
Okay.
Doing some French coping as well.
I'm very similar. So I've gone Red Bull, but I've then gone Ferrari.
Yeah, I think that's genuine.
I don't know. There's like the general consensus is they're basically the same.
It does seem really close.
Yeah, and then Mercedes third, then McLaren, then Aston, then RB, then Sauber.
Yeah.
And then I've gone Williams, Haas, Alpine.
You put Alpine last.
I just don't think they've got any hope at the moment.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I couldn't even tell you who their team principal is and who replaced Otmar.
It's actually a really good point.
Like, it's just chaos. Like, you get rid of your team principal, you have two drivers that have potentially the worst history between teammates in like recent memory.
It's also two drivers. There's no vision, but because like
you get stuck there because
they're both kind of middle-aged, or like middle of their F1 career, maybe coming to the back end.
Yeah,
of it.
like you.
But even Haas, maybe the same example, but they're getting out. They'll be out of it in like a year or two, when realistically Ollie Behrman probably gets a seat.
Well, it's not even that. It's like you look at Haas, like okay, you can see they're kind of a development team. You can kind of see where there's progress. You have drivers coming in. Whereas Alpine, it's like they have no links to the other teams. They have no
one's using their engine anymore.
Yeah, no one's taking their drivers. Like the drivers aren't wanted by anyone because they don't know how they're performing.
Yeah.
It's just a mess.
Yeah.
Alright, what have you gone for?
Well, I've gone very similar to Biddles. I had to kind of differentiate between the wheels here. So, yeah, I've gone Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, RB, or I will be referring to them as Toro Rosso. Yes, VCOB. I'm going to go Sauber, Williams, Haas, Alpine.
Isn't that exactly what?
I think so.
I think that is exactly what.
I got a really bad short-term memory.
Yeah, I personally, out of these ones, I think McLaren have the potential to go up.
I think Red Bull have the potential to go down.
God, I hope so. Just both from a purely competitive aspect and because I need the downfall of Red Bull at some point. And we do need change. Even when Mercedes were good, there was at least two drivers competing for it.
What
most of them. 2014 and 20, maybe not 20.
Not 15.
Years.
Well, 2 out of the 3.
2 out of like the 8 years they were dominant.
Well, so, okay, so you had 2014, there were 2.
Yeah.
2016, there were 2. 2015 was...
No.
No, I'm not giving that. 17 and 18.
Like
Yeah.
half a season, and then Mercedes was like, "Oh, we're actually going to work on our upgrades."
Well, it's
now."
not their fault Ferrari just suddenly decided to have skill issues.
No, it's not.
Yeah,
But-
I'm giving 17 and 18.
Okay.
Fine, I'll grant you 19 and 20 were not really that
Yeah, in
competitive.
2021 they didn't win.
We don't talk about 2021.
We do on another podcast
Yes.
we did a few weeks ago.
Not anymore though. But yeah, I think it has potential, and I don't think that there is a team that is looking horrific, apart from perhaps Alpine. But even that, I still think they might be a bit better than they're suggesting. So roll on Bahrain in a few days' time now. As well as that, last week we saw Drive to Survive, the 6th season of everyone's favourite F1 reality TV show. You can tell by how it's. What do we think of Drive? I don't mind it.
It passes the time and builds excitement.
Yeah, I do think it should be earlier in the year. It should be like a early February thing.
It used to be.
This is late for the Drive to
It's
Survive
definitely
this
the
year.
Lewis news.
Mm.
Like all
Yeah.
like the Andretti
Frantic editing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, so there are a few things that came out of Drive to Survive. I mean, you mentioned there Lewis Hamilton. An episode called Leap of Faith, I think it was episode 6, fully focused on Mercedes and Hamilton's kind of dislike. I don't think dislike's the best word, but it's the one I've thought of them kind of not changing the car. And again, this is probably heavy. I think, well, they put Ferrari in the episode for a little bit, obviously. I think edited ever so slightly to bring in the Hamilton to Ferrari news that dropped a few weeks before. But with the episode, you do kind of understand a bit more about why Lewis might have made the decision to go to Ferrari, because he's very vocal in terms of how he didn't want to keep the philosophy going, and yet Mercedes ignored him and created the W14, which in the end wasn't. It might not have even been better than the W13. It's just everyone else was a bit kind of worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
Chinmay,
definitely a better car.
yeah. What do you think? Kind of, at least for me, it kind of explained it a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, there's nothing more I can really add on that, to be honest. Yeah.
As well as that, we saw the finale of Gunther Steiner.
No!
Very sad. A legend of the show. Probably, I'd say, out of everyone in the show, the one that probably saw the highest the most increase in profile.
And Danny Rick.
And Danny Rick. But everyone loves.
I'm of the opinion Danny Rick is only on the grid because of Drive to Survive. That is the only reason he still has a seat.
Well, he'll probably be featured next season
Yay.
when
he loses his seat.
Oh, the narrative. We gotta do that. As well as that, well, a notable absence from the season for the majority of it was Max Verstappen, who reports are saying he refused to take part, which I mean is his prerogative.
I mean, we never saw him on the actual TV feeds anyway during races.
It makes the season a lot more exciting when he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, is there much you'd be losing?
No.
Talk about the record.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's probably, 5 minutes?
Yeah, I
They
mean,
can't make a whole episode on him winning every single race of the
Not on
season.
Red Bull. You have a Red Bull episode.
yeah, but
And
what,
like,
it's
you
just-
have the contrasting
It was
seasons of Checo and
True.
Max.
But it would just turn into, oh, look at us, we're good.
Yeah, but it's
It's
also
not-
like, look at Checo, he's bad.
That's mean. No, it wasn't.
He wasn't great.
It wasn't
last year.
ideal, but
Hopefully he bounces back this year.
yeah, I think Verstappen not being in it, I get it, and I also don't think it took away from
Spectacle.
generally what could have, or what came out of it. As well as that, Otmar leaving halfway through Belgium.
That was so funny.
Alpine, we're going to get... there were criticism focusing on Alpine, but I think there was quite a bit of drama for them.
I think for me the biggest thing I took from Drive to Survive is just how unlikable Alpine is as a team.
Mm. And they're going to do it again this year. And it's going to be way worse and arguably more entertaining
I
to
feel like
watch.
Alpine are in it every year because they've always got some kind of competition or some drama, and it's always Otmar making himself look like an idiot.
It's
The Oscar Piastri drama from a few years ago might be my favourite.
That Oscar.
No,
That tweet.
Do you remember?
I love how
Great
Otmar
days.
goes on Drive to Survive saying, if there's one team principle you need to take care of two chaotic drivers, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you have a very good track record of that. But
You almost encourage it, Otmar.
Yeah.
yes,
And then finally, Liam Lawson, very unhappy that he didn't get the AlphaTauri seat, which again, you can kind of understand.
I can definitely understand. In his 3 races, he did better in an F1 car than a seasoned veteran. Why would you not just keep him the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be on the grid soon, but I do get his, like,
It's the
he
year
wants
of
to-
his life that
yeah.
he's effectively.
It's also really funny. I think it was the Singapore Grand Prix. Like Sainz and Verstappen were explaining to Lawson what he'd be going through, and you just see the smile kind of drop off his face as they tell him after lap 3 he'll want it to be over. Which is really
50-something lap race.
As well as that, we had a few memes. Haas bringing a spoon to a gunfight.
Oh, yeah. Will Buxton.
Will Buxton and Danica Patrick taking on the Will Buxton role, telling us that a driver's tools are their hands and
Their
feet,
feet.
and their feet. It was hands and feet. Yeah,
Not sitting it yet.
but yeah, I think this season, at least from the reaction I've seen, generally positive.
I think it just made the season seem better than it was.
Yeah, with just a lot of coping about 2023.
I think this year as well, kind of because it's kind of a boring season. They've actually focused a lot more on the storylines proper. Probably yes, obviously they missed probably the biggest being Checo struggles, but obviously that happens every year, and you've got 10 episodes. You can't,
Such a shot.
yeah. But yeah,
No, I do know what you mean because
Yeah.
there was some criticism. It's when they cover the races that's probably the weakest
Yeah.
point of Drive to Survive.
yeah. So going back to the point, like, this year is not so much of a season, but basically just a massively overglorified YouTube video rewind of the last year's season. Whereas this year they've actually managed to do a lot more behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I think hopefully that's what they take away from it. The behind the scenes stuff is kind of what people are there to see. Obviously, you've got to frame it around a race of some kind.
I think they've been aided by the other sports documentaries. So you've got like the quarterback one that's come out where
You've
it's a
got
lot of like the
quarterback,
behind the scenes. You've got like full
Full
swing,
Swing,
the tennis
Breaking
one.
Point. They've got really good names, to be fair.
Yeah. Like all of these ones where it's like, it is a bit more like behind the scenes because there aren't radios that you
It's-
can put in the wrong place.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to engage. Golf is.
Golf's a good sport.
Golf's a good sport, but it's hard to make drama
Exciting,
out of golf.
Yeah, so I think they've learned that actually the behind the scenes and the rugby one as well now.
Yeah.
That kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, but
is the way forward.
I thought it was enjoyable, and I think I'm about halfway through it, so I think I'll finish it. And just generally, I think it's a good build up to the start of the season. And yeah, so that brings us to the end of the show. Unless we want to add anything, I can't think of anything we might have missed of. And yeah, obviously, season starting in a few days now. So I've been Will. We've been joined by Will and Chinmay as ever. And yeah, thank you for listening.